So in this segment, we're going to be talking about a former Stormont official criticising the UK's attitude over the protocol. So just breaking news from today, which is the 5th of May. The government appeared to have backstepped from their protocol position. The kind of repealing bits of the government law aren't in the Queen's speech. So essentially, they backed off their original position of trying to repeal certain bits of the protocol to avoid British law, if that makes sense. Bunch of cowards, really. Leak things by press, and they've scuppered the DUP's chances, which I guess you have to give them credit for, because obviously people, DUP voters are going to see this and realise that the DUP have nothing. But anyways, this is slightly separate to that. This is Andrew McCormick. He was central to the Brexit negotiations and their impact on Northern Ireland, and this is an article from Tony Connolly. This one is a long one because Tony Connolly only writes novels, but it's really important, I think, just because this man debunks any notion of the British kind of idea that things were unforeseen, etc. And if this thing, if the Northern Ireland Protocol, if it ever goes to court, I think he'd be a key witness in terms of the damage it's done to Northern Ireland and the unforeseen aspects. So a former senior Stormont official has issued a highly critical broadside attack against the UK government over its attitude to the Northern Ireland Protocol. McCormick, who was a lead figure for 5 years in the Brexit negotiations and their impact on Northern Ireland. Now he has said the UK government knew full well what the protocol entailed and that it is chiefly responsible for what was agreed with the European Union in 2019. So he's saying the UK knew exactly what the consequences of the protocol were back in 2019. They knew exactly what they were voting for. He also dismissed any notion that the protocol was anti-democratic. Responsibility for the withdrawal agreement of 2019 and the protocol lies fairly and squarely with the UK government. Dr. McCormack has written in an article for the Constitution Society. So the people in Northern Ireland, they can try and argue it's undemocratic, which is not the strongest argument that, the Northern Ireland Protocol was imposed on them, because Westminster ultimately rules over Northern Ireland. There is Stormont, which governs day-to-day issues, but ultimately Westminster has the majority of the power. It was Westminster that imposed the Northern Ireland Protocol on the people of Northern Ireland, but they did so through democracy, essentially. It's hard to imagine anything other than Brexit itself with greater democratic legitimacy under the UK Constitution than something that was the very centre of the manifesto on which a government secured a clear majority in a general election. So I know people argue Brexit itself was undemocratic because of all the dodgy money amongst other things, but in 2019 the Northern Ireland Protocol was part of the withdrawal agreement, which was part of the Tory manifesto. So it was there, everyone could see it. The Tories lied about it. They said there'd be no border in the Irish Sea. Brandon Lewis lied about it on, I think it was the 1st of January last year, when he said, see, there's no border in the Irish Sea, and he looked very stupid on the Andrew Marr show later on the summer. I think I covered that one. But yeah, ultimately, this is it. They can't argue it. He goes on to say there is little credibility in any argument that the UK government either did not anticipate the implications of what it had agreed or was constrained and unable to choose any other option. And Lord Frost argues that the Northern Ireland Protocol was important purely because they needed to win the 2019 general election and get Brexit done. But that doesn't, that's a non-starter, because who cares? It's not about how the agreement came about. It's that the agreement is there and both sides have agreed to it. So that's it, pretty much. He argues, McCormack argues, there is little credibility in an argument that the UK government did not anticipate the implications of what it had agreed to. So he's saying the UK government knew exactly what it agreed to. Therefore, all of these arguments about unforeseen consequences are nonsense. Liz Truss has been really quiet on this, but to be fair, like I've always said, she's got a lot more to deal with than just Brexit. And the time constraint to get Brexit done was entirely self-imposed, which is true that the UK government itself set the deadlines. Indeed, as some have pointed out, the UK government could not explain the protocol without having to explain the properly wider consequences of Brexit, which is true. Why did we need the Northern Ireland Protocol in the first place? It's a result of the GB leaving the customs union and single market. That's why we needed the Irish sea border. Dr. McCormick retired last year as Director General of International Relations for the Northern Ireland Executive Office. Between 2017 and 2020, when the North's institutions were suspended, he regularly attended UK ministerial meetings and until May 21 represented the executive during the meetings of the EU-UK Specialised Committee on the Protocol. So he was there, he saw everything that was going on for the most part in the meetings between, it would have been Lord Frost and Michel Barnier. He knew what was said. You know, he would have seen, like, they would have spoken about the consequences. I'm sure Barnier would have said, you know, if you agree to the Northern Ireland Protocol, these are the consequences of it. And Frost was probably like, yeah, cool, no worries, bro. Dr. McCormick was involved in the Mayhew talks of 92-93 and worked on the implementation of the North-South institutions established by the Good Friday Agreement. So this is the gentleman who's very much involved in Northern Ireland, the peace process. So back in 92-93, he would have been involved potentially in the Good Friday Agreement. He was involved in the setting up of the institutions between the North and the South. Very much involved in the process in Northern Ireland. So this would be a very respectable person. He was involved in multiple meetings with the European Commission Task Force on Brexit during the withdrawal agreement talks. McCormick said there was no basis for the argument that cross-community voting should be required for the application of the consent provisions of the protocol. Now, I would argue that there is no need for cross-community consent because you never looked for that in the first place. If it was all done by cross-community consent, you can make the argument for it, but it was never done when back in 2016, not really. Back in 2019, it wasn't done, and the unionists were just lied to the whole time. By the time they realised what happened, the jig was up. This was because international relations were not a devolved issue, as was made clear by a number of UK acts, because it's Scotland doesn't deal with international issues as such, it's Westminster that deals with it. You know, Scotland doesn't have its own foreign secretary, neither does Wales, neither does Northern Ireland, not really. Not anyone as powerful as Liz Truss anyways. He said it was clear that the UK government and the EU had jointly considered the implications of the absence of cross-community consent and made a clear agreement that the protocol would continue to apply even if a simple majority in the Assembly approved. And that's part of the protocol as well. The consent mechanism doesn't talk about unionist or nationalist consent, it's just a majority. Now, you can argue that the people of Northern Ireland would effectively consent to this by voting in a load of unionists or a load of nationalists. The Stormont system is a bit weird, but if they wanted to get rid of it, that's what they would do. But at the moment, it's parties that either like the protocol or are tolerant of the Northern Ireland Protocol, not for the UP. He said there was evidence that the protocol does not have the consent of a simple majority of both the electorate in Northern Ireland. He said there was evidence that the protocol does have the consent of a simple majority, both of the electorate in Northern Ireland and the Assembly. So essentially, that's it pretty much. There's a lot more in this. There's a bit more in this article that I need to talk about. Dr. McCormick warned that nationalists were still required to acknowledge unionist concerns. Irish nationalists and Republicans need to recognise that stability and security for all communities depend on confidence. So essentially saying, like, I think in my opinion it would be, don't talk about a border poll now. You know, let this thing pass. You know, it's already making waves with Sinn Féin becoming the single largest party in Stormont. Even if it can be argued that unionists should have seen more value in the Good Friday Agreement, real politics should acknowledge that the unionist community has limited and for some at least diminishing confidence in the settlement, and that the protocol represents a real change to their confidence. So effectively saying the unionist community don't really believe, at least some of them didn't really believe in the Good Friday Agreement, and that the protocol in itself changes the dynamics between GB and NI. Dramatically. You know, it does push Northern Ireland much closer to Ireland. It cannot be denied that Brexit and the protocol create very challenging sets of issues, and neither was explained properly. And you know, it's Brexit that has done this to these people. They wanted to be as far away from Ireland as possible, and now they're closer. Northern Ireland is closer to Ireland in a lot of senses. Dr. McCormick said the government of Boris Johnson should have made it clear in October 2019 what the implications of the protocol were. I think if he had done that, I don't know if he would have struggled in the election, but it would have been rough sailing, I think. And that the Irish Sea border would be made harder the more the UK diverged from EU standards, which is true, and that's something British officials aren't even talking about. You know, whenever they talk about deregulation, they don't actually mention the simple fact that the more we deregulate, the more problems it will cause in the Irish Sea border. and obviously with trading with France, etc., and other countries, but more predominantly with Northern Ireland. It is hard to see any basis for tolerating the unwillingness of the UK government ministers to invest fully in a fact-based problem-solving approach to a highly complex and sensitive task. The simple fact is, they won't do a facts-based problem-solving approach, because if they do a facts-based approach, they're going to see the main problem is them, and the other issues are that the UK government hasn't invested enough money in border facilities, and that's what's causing a bottleneck in itself. The clear responsibility of London and Dublin was and is to build confidence, and that requires honesty. Dublin has been really honest. I think Simon Coveney, from what I've seen of him, has been really honest and tried to be as friendly as possible, I guess. It's London that have been dishonest, let's be real here. Frost said the Northern Ireland Protocol has left the Good Friday Agreement on life support and needs to be he's talking about the Northern Ireland Protocol here being renegotiated or scrapped. That's simply not going to happen, because the TCA will be gone if that does happen. So yeah, it's an absolute joke. It's not going to happen. But yeah, this is a longish article, but what you can gather from this is the fact that the UK government has no leg to stand on when it comes to arguing that the Northern Ireland Protocol has unforeseen circumstances. Absolutely no leg to stand on whatsoever. And, they're going to get called out by more and more people, I think, that, worked within the process of getting the agreement signed, the Northern Ireland Protocol. But anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe. Support the channel on Patreon if you can. And let me know what you think in the comments below, and I'll see you next time.